everybody, and welcome to my second installment of A Look Into. So, today we are going to be covering The Dangerous Art of Blending In by Angelo Surmelis, um, who is a Greek American author. This is actually his only novel, and it's his debut novel, and it was released January 30th of 2018, so about 5 years ago now, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. So this is a YA novel because the YA genre holds a very close place to my heart. So I think I should provide a little bit of a trigger warning before I actually get into talking about the novel, because there are some things in here that can be triggering for some people. So, the trigger warning I will provide is for physical and mental abuse, religious abuse, depression, suicidal ideation, and loss and grief. So, if any of those things will make you uncomfortable or trigger you in any way, please click off of my video. I won't be offended, and this may not be a novel for you, but if you do want to read it, please, please, please take care of yourself while doing so. So, this novel is about 45 pages long. It took me 4 hours in total to read it. I couldn't put it down. It is one of my favorite books that I've ever read. This novel is based off of the author's experience as a teen, as a gay teen living in a very religious household. So that's where a little bit of those trigger warnings come into place. So the main character of this novel, his name is Evan Pano. I believe that's how you say his last name. He is a closeted 17-year-old boy who lives with his emotionally absent father. So his father is still there, but he's very much distanced himself from Evan and just from anything that's really happening in the family. And his extremely abusive mother. Like, she is physically, mentally, and religiously abusive towards Evan. Both of his parents are immigrants from Greece, so Evan is a first generation American citizen. And he takes pride in this fact that his parents are immigrants. So, as I said, Evan is 17, so he's in high school. And he lives in a very conservative religious town. Like, very conservative and very religious. So Evan tries his best to kind of throughout the novel, Evan tries his best to fly under the radar and like hide and avoid like stirring anything up or setting anything off, so he doesn't upset his mother, who for his whole life has called him such terrible things. Some of them, she's called him ugly, called him a sinner, and told him to his face that she wishes that he would just die. So, yeah, she's not a very good mother. She also, throughout the novel, and from what we can tell before, like, the events in the novel, repeatedly beats Evan, and uses the excuse that she is trying to quote unquote fix him. So, yeah, there's that. So as I mentioned earlier, Evan is in the closet. Evan is a closeted gay man. And even though he's not out to everyone in his life, his mother, who is extremely religious and hides behind her religious views to excuse the way that she is treating her son. Um, Sorry, it gets me a little choked up. But she fears that Evan is gay, even though he hasn't come out or really made anything known about his sexuality. Um, she fears that Evan is gay, or as she calls LGBTQ plus people, deviants. Um, so something that she does repeatedly throughout the novel, she does it once a week. Um, she does this once a week. She brings over devout members from their church to pray over Evan and pray that he is released from the devil. Basically, just make him straight, even though Evan has not come out or made anything known about his sexuality to his family. And Evan's father, as I said, he is very emotionally distant. He rarely intervenes when his wife is abusing Evan, whether it be through religion or just physically and emotionally and like mentally. Um, he doesn't say anything, but he does tell Evan at one point that he doesn't agree with what his wife is doing. He just doesn't want to step in between her because then he'll be the one at the brunt end of her anger and not Evan, which I think is absolute bullshit. Sorry. Um I think that's insane. Like that's terrible terrible logic. It makes no sense whatsoever. Um so he also gets a bad parenting award along with the mother. But um yeah, so Evan is very very like to himself. He doesn't really talk about himself that much to anybody, even his friends. For the most time, the cuts and bruises that Evan has from his mother's abuse go unnoticed, and when somebody does notice them, he blames it on him, like falling down the stairs, or running into something, or just being really clumsy in general, which I think is insane because literally a little bit trigger warning right here for the physical abuse, even though I've been talking about it. Here's a very like explicit mention. Um Literally at one point in the novel, Evan's mother smashes his head against a mirror, and all the cuts he has on his face he blames from running into a wall. And nobody really gets like alarm bells or anything like that besides his friend Henry, who we're going to talk about in a second. But for the most time they go unnoticed, which is insane. And Evan isn't only being abused at home, he is being relentlessly bullied at school. Because, like I said, he lives in a very religious, conservative town, and his mother talks to her friends about how Evan is with, quote unquote, the devil, how he might be gay, and how bad this is for her and everything. And word spreads very fast in small towns. So almost everybody knows that Evan's mom thinks that Evan is gay. So he is relentlessly bullied by his classmates and just other students in the school. They will constantly, throughout the novel, they constantly accuse him of being gay and scream every slur that's known to man that I can't even repeat. Like, almost any slur that you can think of that can be used for a queer person is used towards Evan in this novel, which is absolutely heartbreaking. So to help with all of this as a coping mechanism, Evan uses art in drawing to escape all of his pain. He loves to draw. He wants to be an artist, but his mother wants him to be something like a doctor or something that's more successful. So at one point, when Evan says that he has applied for an art school, like, because he's applying to like programs and like colleges to try to get into college once he graduates high school, um, he says that he needs to make a portfolio of some of his favorite artworks that he has in his room, and he's very excited about it because he was finally pushed by a teacher who can see how much he wants to be an artist and how much he loves art, and was able to push him to finally apply to this art school. His mom destroys every piece of art that he has in his room that he made. Everything. She tears it off the walls, she rips it. If it's on canvas, she cuts the canvas. Like, she makes it unusable so he can't apply for this art school because she wants him to be a doctor. Um Evan is stuck in this loop, and he feels like there's really no way out. So at one point he does try to take his own life. Um and it's just heartbreaking because I feel like many of us know what it's like to be there. And I know I personally know what it's like to be there. And it's heartbreaking to see yourself in a character when they're at their lowest moment, but it's so real. So, sorry. I feel like that was one of the moments in the book that really stuck out to me. As you can tell, I'm keeping myself from crying. But he's stuck in this loop and tries to take his own life, but he fails at his attempt, and he decides, well, I can just keep going for a little longer since it failed. And his reasoning is maybe God wanted me to stay a little longer because he still believes in God. Despite everything that his mother has put him through, he still believes in God. So he's like, maybe God wanted me to stay a little longer. So he decides to keep going. Um, and the more the story goes on, the more that this cycle in this loop that Evan is stuck in starts to break. And one of the like start what's the word like first moments where there you go where we're able to realize that this loop and this cycle that Evan is breaking out of, that he was stuck in for almost his whole life, was in he realizes that he has feelings for his best friend Henry, who we mentioned a little earlier. So Henry has been Evan's best friend for a while. They've known each other almost their whole life. They've been best friends, and Evan is now just starting to realize that he likes Henry more than a friend. And that terrifies Evan because he is so scared to trust anyone in his life, especially with his sexuality, given all of the things that has happened with his mother. And his mother doesn't even know that he's gay. She just assumed. And like all the abuse that he's gone through, he is terrified of what's going to happen. And he feels that as much as he trusts Henry, he can't even tell his best friend about his sexuality or about how he's feeling because he's scared of what's going to happen if it gets out to everybody. Um, and he totally has 100% like reasoning to be terrified, especially with his mother. And this just goes beyond his mother. Like, the bullying he would get from his classmates and just how he would be treated by the community and how he'd basically just become more of an outcast than he is now. He has every reason to be afraid. And as the book goes on, the more the relationship between Evan and Henry develops. And they have moments where that they're beautiful moments where Evan is like, maybe life isn't that bad, but he keeps getting pulled down by his mother. Um, and just some of the things that she told him will flash into his mind, and he'll be like, no, I deserve to. He's convinced himself that he is a bad person, which is sometimes, most of the time, what happens when children are abused by their parents. They think that they're the bad person and not the other way around, where the person who's abusing you is the bad person. You think that it's your fault. So Evan doesn't let himself be happy. He thinks he deserves to be miserable from all the things that have happened to him. And then at one point, one of those happy moments turns into one of the most pivotal moments of the book, when Henry sits Evan down and goes, I know you're not okay. Please tell me what's wrong. I really care about you more than a friend should. So Henry confesses his feelings. And then Evan confesses his feelings for Henry back and talks about everything, talks about how scared he is. He mentions that his mother is abusing him, and Henry takes it seriously. And Evan only really mentioned that he was being abused by his mother at one other point in the novel to someone, and it was to his pastor, and the pastor said that Evan deserved it. So this is the first time that somebody's actually taking Evan seriously. And Evan just breaks down and tells Henry all of this stuff. And instead of leaving, Henry stays, which I think is amazing. It literally made me sob. I had to put the book down for like a couple of minutes to like get myself together because I was sobbing uncontrollably. And then once I reached the end of the novel, I reflected on it more, and I was able to see just how Evan, for a majority, literally had no support whatsoever. He had no supports from anyone in his life, which broke my heart. Like I said, I found myself relating to Evan. This is another reason I found myself relating to him, because I'm agender, demisexual, and panromantic. And I went to a Catholic school for 14 and a half years, and I come from a very religious and conservative home. So I'm able to relate to the fear that Evan was feeling, which made me sob more. But just the complexity of Evan is amazing. He is one of the most relatable characters that I've ever seen in a novel. Like, I found myself in Evan's shoes and just seeing myself in what Evan was like back when I was 17. I'm 20 now and I'm about to turn 21, but when I was 16, 17, I was going through some of the stuff that Evan was going through. And yeah, I reached some of the lowest points of my life, and just being able to see that represented in a character who doesn't, like in a gay character whose whole personality isn't them being gay, is amazing. And then one of the final things, like thoughts that I have about this novel, sorry if it's a little scattered, I really liked this book. Something I think is very powerful about this novel is the ending. So a little bit of a spoiler. If you don't want to listen, I recommend stopping the video, reading the book, and then coming back. Or if you don't want to come back at all, it doesn't matter. But something I think is powerful is that this book doesn't have a stereotypical happy ending. Evan comes out, and he comes out to everybody, and he isn't accepted by his mother. He isn't accepted by a bunch of people in their community. He isn't greeted by his mother with open arms as she's crying, talking about how sorry she is and how much she loves him. No, she punches him when he comes home and kicks him out of the house. He is kicked out of his house after he comes out by his mother, and his father just stands there and lets her punch Evan and kick him out. And then Evan packs all of his things, puts them in his car, and leaves. And at the very end of the book, Evan still stays in town, but he's living somewhere else. I believe he's living with Henry, or one of his other friends, but at the end of the book, Evan is working in a coffee shop, and he's still 17. Not a lot of time has passed. And the dad is in the coffee shop, and the dad says, "I'm sorry for letting her kick you out." And Evan just walks away. He doesn't forgive his father for all of the stuff that happened. He doesn't forgive his mother, which I think is more realistic, especially in the LGBTQ plus community, because a lot of the time there is not going to be a happy ending to some of our stories. Even not an ending, just like the end of a chapter. There's not going to be happy endings, especially with the way things are now with the anti-trans bills and just anti-LGBTQ plus bills altogether. There's not really a happy ending all of the time, and sometimes in media that gets lost. Like, sometimes films and books make us think we need that happy ending, and we need that like Disney good ending, how they kind of did Encanto when they were talking about how like Mirabel forgives Abuela for all of the crazy stuff that she put them through, which is crazy. But life isn't always going to be those happy endings, and you're going to lose people for just being who you are. And I feel like this book does a great job of showing what it's really like to be an LGBTQ plus person in an extremely conservative like environment. So it's a lot, but this book was a lot. I found myself having to put it down a few times while I was reading it. Even though I read it in about 4 hours, I found myself having to put it down for at least like 10 minutes and just like pulling myself back together and then continuing reading, because I needed to take a step away, because I felt like I was reading some aspects of my own life. So, yeah, it's a lot, but I really do recommend this book. It is one of my favorite ones that I've ever read, as you can tell from how long I've been talking about it for almost 25 minutes. But I really do recommend this novel. You can read it. Please, I encourage you to read it. But if you do read it, I ask that you do it with caution and taking care of yourself while you do so, because there are the themes in this novel can be very triggering and are very relatable to a lot of people, sadly. So just take care of yourself while you're reading it. I personally give this book 5 out of 5 stars. I think it's amazing. Like I said, I really recommend you read it, but please take care of yourself as you do so. You are important, and you deserve to be taken care of and be in a good space. So please read this book when you're in a good space and take care of yourself. All right. Thank you so much for listening / watching. All right. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.